Welcome back, you beautiful people. I believe this should be episode number 69. Kind of a legendary freaking episode. 69. Get it? Yeah. And this one, we're talking about how to test products with niche stores the right way. And really just kind of talking about how to test products in general and our kind of strategy behind this. I believe this was also inspired by something with Scotty. Did someone ask this in the Telegram?
Yes, someone did.
Yeah.
Someone did.
So we got some hot takes here. I think this is a really important topic because strategically, like people talk about testing products and like how to do it, with Facebook ads and, this and that. But I don't think a lot of people talk about the general kind of overarching strategy behind it. And like, I don't know, like the operational side of it, I guess it would be. So we want to walk you guys through our strategy here, what we think is the best way to do it, and all these kinds of things so that you can hopefully find something that works faster and by spending and losing less money on things that don't work. So the basic premise of the strategy that we do, the strategy that we teach when it comes to e-commerce is a strategy that can kind of be summed up as going after a specific market and selling them a product that they already want. We're not going after the shiny new winning product that's trendy or something like that. We're going after things that are more proven, I guess you could say. Things that might be a little bit more boring. They're not as like flashy or cool. They're probably not going to see them blowing up on TikTok anytime soon, but they're products that people want, that people need, that people buy, and we're there to sell to them. So what this essentially means is like kind of the way that this culminates in terms of like, I guess the way that people think about different types of stores is the stores that we build are, I guess you would call them niche stores. They're stores that are centered around a specific market of people. It's only for them. We don't have a general store selling a bunch of random unrelated products. If we have multiple products on a store, they are all related in some way in that they are meant to be sold to the same type of person. I think you guys kind of get the general idea here of what a market is. We're just going after one market. And generally the way that we do this is we start with a market that we think might be good. We do research on that market to find out what they're already buying, what they want to buy. And we find a product that we think they're going to like, that we think is going to be best, that's going to have a great product market fit. And then we test it. If it doesn't work, then I think this is kind of a key distinction that you mentioned, Scotty, in the Telegram, was if the thing that we think is the best product in that market doesn't work, a lot of the times we're not just going to go on and move to our second, our third, our fourth option, but instead do something completely different. Can you explain a little bit about why that's kind of how we do things?
Yeah, so let's say, for example, we're trying to tackle the fishing market, and we think we'll start generally with the market. So we'll start looking for products that we could sell to the fishing market. Okay. We find a bunch of products, we pick the one that we think has the best chance of succeeding, and we test it. If that doesn't work, that was our number one pick. If our number one pick flopped, we're not just going to blindly test the number two, number three, and number four pick because we already thought they weren't as good as the first one. So unless we discovered some new information that changes our mind about which is the most likely to succeed, there's not really a reason to test the others. Of course, any of them might succeed for reasons that we don't yet understand. But in terms of probabilities, what we do is we try to evaluate what has the most chance of succeeding. If that doesn't succeed, products with, in our opinion, a lower chance of succeeding probably won't either. So that's generally why we'll test something, maybe multiple rounds of tests, tweak the ads, tweak the landing pages, whatever we might want to do. But if that first product doesn't work at all, we'll generally scrap the entire idea and move on to a new concept.
That is indeed the rundown right there. When we're testing products, I think, we're calling them a niche store. You got to understand, like the nomenclature here is like not all that important. Like people call them different things. A lot of them are just like freaking marketing terms for people to use in their YouTube videos to make their videos try to blow up. I guess you could consider when we're testing a new product, a new store, a new market, most of the time you could consider that a one product store, because at any given time, we're only going to be testing one product at a time. We're not going to build a store with 6 products and then start running ads for 3 of them. We're going to run ads for one product. So most likely, there are scenarios where this changes. If it makes sense to have multiple different products that you're trying to test, and like you could send it to a collection page, it really depends on the situation. But for the most part, we're just going to have one product in the store, one product at a time, and we're going to test it.
Yep, 100%. 100%. What do we do for the actual tests? Can you sort of give the rundown there?
Yeah. So I guess like what we call this a round of tests. So a round of tests is just basically every time you launch something dramatically new and test it with Facebook ads for a couple days. That's one round of tests. So generally before we kill something and move on to something completely different, we'll usually do at least 2 to 3 rounds of tests for the same product and market. And what we do from there is really dependent on the results of those tests. But the main thing between the different rounds of tests is you have to make sure that each round of tests is dramatically different from the last. If you start testing a product and you don't make any sales, you can't just go and change up a few words on the product page, or change the color of your add to cart button, or make a bunch of small changes. Like these things are not going to have a big enough impact to change the results of the previous test. You have to be testing things that are big enough to have a huge impact and they can actually change the results that you're getting. The main things that's going to involve is changing the offer. That's a huge one. Changing the angle, selling it with a completely different marketing angle, doing something dramatically different with your ad creatives, your copy, etc. Making a completely different product page. That's a big change. Between the rounds of tests, you have to make sure that you're making big changes. So that's kind of the first thing. And then what we do from there is, if after 2 to 3 rounds of tests, each somewhat different from the last, how it works is we'll set it up on Facebook. We'll usually do 3 ad sets with about $20 a day in ad spend each. So it'll be like $60 a day total. We'll let those run for 2 to 3 days. Let them spend a little bit, make sure that the results on day 1, if the results are bad on day 1, we don't want to shut them off right away because they might improve on day 2. Kind of see what the results are after 2 days. And then if they're really shit, we might just turn it off. If they're like kind of okay, then we might leave them on for a 3rd day just to get more data. But then if we do a few rounds of tests like that, and for each round of tests, we generally are going to spend somewhere between $100 and $200 in ad spend for each round of tests. If after 2 to 3 rounds of tests, it's not working at all, it's not showing any promise, it's not making any sales, or there's like a fundamental problem, you're making some sales, but the margins are really bad and you would need like a crazy high ROAS to even make it work, and it's just like not showing any potential, that's when we'd kill it and move on to something else. 2 to 3 rounds of tests, 100 to 200 in ad spend for each round of tests. Generally speaking, you don't want to spend more than like $500 testing a single product and market if it's not working at all. Now that does change a little bit. If you're like making sales and it's like on the verge of break even, then you might want to run a few more rounds of tests. You don't want to give up on something that is showing some sort of promise, especially if it's improving from the beginning. If each round of tests is getting better, that's a good sign that you should probably keep on with it. But it just kind of depends on the results. And if it's not working at all, it's not showing any signs of promise, those are the general rules that we use to kind of decide what to do.
That is about it. I think where people get confused is where, if you want to succeed, you have to test a lot. I feel like that's a pretty generally accepted piece of advice.
I'd say that's true.
I would say it's true, but
there's some nuance, ain't there?
You have to understand what a lot means. A lot doesn't mean 4 products a week. A lot is like 2 to 3 products a month. That is a lot. I mean, that's a shit ton. If you did that for a year, that's like 24 to 36 products in a year. That's more than I've tested in my life.
Yeah.
So testing a lot isn't as much as you think. But in order for it to work, you have to put in actual effort. You can test 100 products and none of them are going to work if you half-ass the work on all of them. Whereas if you just pick 5 products in 5 different markets and you put in the 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 hours on each of them to build out the store, make it look really nice, write really good copy, then I think you're going to have a much higher chance of success.
Intentional testing, kind of like we were talking about last week in one of the episodes about intentional practice. It's about intentional testing.
That it is. And again, when I say you have to put in the work to make them actually good, things we do versus things we don't. We put a lot of effort into the copy and we put a lot of effort into making the product page look good. Don't put a lot of effort into the homepage, logo, etc. But the product page needs to look good. That means your picked product photos need to look good. It means the content in the actual description needs to look good. It means the copy needs to be well written and focused on the main benefits. Think about what you're hooking people in with in your headline. Your formatting needs to be nice so that your headlines and the body paragraphs of your copy look really nice. You can do that with, it's simple. It's just like bolding, using a nice font, etc. Simple stuff that really makes a big difference when people land on your site. That we do. What we don't do hours and hours of research. We might do like 30 minutes of research, but it's not a week of market research, product research, etc. We also don't generally shoot our own content. Not even generally, we never shoot our own content when we're getting started with a new product. You only test stuff that you actually have okay content for. That's how we do it.
That's a pretty big factor too. Like you need decent content to sell a product. And if there's just no content, if all the content is just like terrible, it's going to be really hard to make that work. And the reason that we don't do our content, we don't shoot our own content from day one when we first start testing our product, is just, it comes down to time. It takes, there are situations where it could be a little bit more, it could actually be a lot quicker, honestly. Like if you just wanted to get some iPhone content, if the product is on Amazon, you could order it off Amazon, have it at your house in 2 days, and then have the content done that same day. You realistically could get that done within like 48 hours. If that was the case, I think that could be worth it. But for the most part, getting your own content is a lot more time intensive than that. It's going to take a lot more, especially if you have to order the product from AliExpress and you got to wait for it to ship to you. If you got to wait 3 weeks to start testing a product, that's just not a viable way to do things. That's going to take way too long. So that's kind of our thought process there.
Yep. So we're not mass testing by any means. We're testing, if we're really going hard on testing, we're testing a couple products a month.
Like max.
But because we're putting in that effort to make it look good, we're putting in the effort to come up with a compelling angle, to come up with a good offer. That's why a fairly large percentage of our product tests actually end up working. Either working great or at least working somewhat. I know when we made Foolproof Facebook ads, I went through sort of all the products that we tested in the past year or whatever, and we had like a ridiculous success rate. I can't remember what it was at the time. It was like 6 out of 9 or something.
Yeah.
Like works profitably. I think right after we made that VSL, we had a little bad streak where everything.
Yeah, I think we did.
So yeah, keep that in mind if you're ever writing a VSL. Don't put your success rate in there. But again, it's just if you put in the effort in the things that don't really take much time, I think that's the key. You can put in an hour of work on making your product page look good, and it's going to make a world of difference. Whereas 30 minutes of market and product research versus 12 hours of product market and research, probably not going to make more than a 10% difference.
Yeah. Spending an hour making a logo, it's probably not going to make much of a difference. I honestly don't know if we've ever launched a store, like a new store with an actual professional logo. I don't think I ever have.
I certainly have not.
You don't need it. You don't need a freaking logo, man. But I think like the culmination of all these things, I think like we've kind of given almost the full rundown. I mean, that's basically everything I can think of in terms of like how we test products. But I want to lay this out in terms of like, what does this look like on a, a month basis? If it takes, so you gotta assume, say it takes a day to come up with and get everything ready for a round of tests. And then you got to wait 2 to 3 days for that round of tests to get the results back. And then you got to analyze them and you got to, come up with a new round of tests. You could do 3 rounds of tests in a week and a half in 10 days. So let's make it, we'll call it 10 days. There's 10 days to do 3 rounds of tests. If that's how many rounds of tests you need to do to test one product before moving on to the next one, that means you can test 3 products a month. If you test 3 products a month and you're actually putting in intentional effort with every single one, it's going to be really tough to not find something that works over the course of a year.
Yeah. Where people go wrong, there's 2 places people go wrong. One we've kind of beaten to death in this episode, which is not putting in enough effort or the right effort. The other place where people go wrong is they have something that's kind of working and they stick with it too long.
Mm-hmm.
That is where a lot of people get lost, where they run a store for 6 months and it's like kind of breaking even. Some days it's profitable, some days unprofitable. At the end of the month, we have 2% margins. At some point, you do have to ask yourself, are there obvious dramatic improvements I can make to this? And if not, how am I going to 2x my ROAS to get to the margin where I need? So if you're at that right around break-even point and you've been running it for a month, maybe time to either be super critical and see where you can make big improvements or decide to shut it down.
Yep. That makes sense. I think, Scotty, what do you think about this? I think we could do this as a bit of a bonus this week. Include kill, tweak, scale with this knowledge drop. What do you think?
That's probably a good idea.
You remember that?
I do.
So we made this. I guess it was for one of our older offers, and I think we included it as a bonus for foolproof Facebook ads. So if you have foolproof Facebook ads, you might already have gone through this. But we made a short video that basically walks through the majority of the most common situations that you're likely to face when testing products and what we would do in those situations. Kill the product. It's called kill, tweak, scale. So you either kill the product and move on to something completely different. You tweak what you're doing and, make some big changes and do another round of tests, or you scale it. And, that's only when it's actually working. But I'll add that as a bonus to this week's knowledge drop so that you guys can take a look at that and you can get maybe a little bit more context for what we're talking about here in terms of how we test products. And that's really like one of the hardest parts, in my opinion, is knowing when it's time to move on, knowing when it's time to keep on with what you're doing and just keep improving it, stick with it. And I think that could definitely help with that. So I will include that this week as well. Nice little bonus for y'all.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I also really think a lot of people in the group are asking questions that they would not be asking if they had foolproof Facebook ads. So get foolproof Facebook ads. Read it.
Yeah, I mean, foolproof Facebook ads is like probably the single most valuable piece of anything that we've put out. Like that course is just so freaking good. It's kind of like our entire e-com strategy, but packaged up into a Facebook ads course.
Yeah, it's a 0 to 1 million a month strategy. 1 million a year strategy.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
Yeah. So if you guys want to get that, you can at go.blueoceanecommerce.com/foolproof Facebook ads. Quite a mouthful of a URL. But yeah, I think that's about it. Scotty, you got anything else to add?
I do not. Let's wrap it up for the week.
Let's do it, man. Well, guys, we hope you enjoyed these episodes. Hope you go check out Kill Tweak Scale after this. As always, let us know your thoughts on this week's knowledge drop in the Telegram. If you have ideas for future episodes, ears are always open. We love hearing from you guys. We love making episodes based off of y'all's ideas, honestly, because some of you guys have some really solid ideas. And especially the previous episode with, 1 mil a year versus 10 mil a year. And this one, I think this one was also inspired by some messages in the Telegram. So let us know what you want us to talk about, what we can help you with. And besides that, have a great rest of your day, night, morning, weekend, afternoon, whatever time it is, wherever it is that you're listening, watching, or listening to this. And we'll talk to you guys next week.
Peace.